I've overheard people talking about me by accident.
Wow.
By accidentally going back to the phone and hearing them talk about me. And I call them out, I don't have a challenge for that. I would be like,
Yes.
I heard that conversation. But guess what? That's okay.
Yes.
I don't treat them any differently.
Indeed.
At the end of the day, I'm aware, but I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to actually return that same type of behavior. What is it Michelle Obama said? When they go
you
low,
go low, we go high.
Exactly. So
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ahmad Rashad Thompson of the iLEAD podcast, the place where leaders come to learn, empower, adapt, and disrupt. And today we are not going to disappoint. We are here for yet another compelling, convicting episode where we're talking to someone that I've looked up to for many, many years, someone that's inspired me along my professional journey, someone that I'm certain is going to inspire you along your climb to the C-suite. I'm here, joined today by Lasonya Missick. Lasonya, it is such a pleasure to have you join me today to talk about all things leadership, but specifically your journey in leadership. What's been your story, what your story has been, and what you're looking forward to as you continue to elevate. Lasonya, thank you for being here. How are you today?
thank you, Ahmad. I am wonderful and so happy to be here and to spend this time with you today.
Absolutely.
So excited.
Indeed. So, Lasonya, we start every conversation off with one question. Who is Lasonya Missick?
Who's Lasonya Missick? I think I'll start first of all by saying I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and certainly I'm a leader of people. I've had the opportunity to truly experience what I would call a bit of a balance of having a wonderful family who's actually supported me throughout my career. My husband has been, we've been together for 26 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 26 years. I have a
Wow.
wonderful 25-year-old son. Probably should tell you about that journey with him over the course of my career, and a 16-year-old daughter. And I stand on the principle of family first,
Yes.
and understanding that at the end of the day, what I do, it's for us and it's for them. I've enjoyed my career in banking, 29 years now. Sometimes when I think
Wow.
about it, I'm like, wow, okay. And I started as a part-time teller on the island of Abaco. So I won't give the exact age. I'm going to start to give away my
Sure,
age, but I think
sure.
people will start to figure it out anyway. But I started as a part-time teller on the island of Abaco and really progressed to where I am today. Taking different, what I would call various risks along the way, being strategic, I think, pretty much. But none of it would have happened if I didn't have the alignment of family, the alignment of family with me. Because, of course, my husband has his own career, right? And we've been together so long, it's been a great partnership.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's who I am.
I thank you for sharing that. I want to start with the family aspect.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously important to you.
Yeah.
How have you been able to be, I don't want to make this episode in any way sexist or feminist.
Right.
But the fact is you're a female,
Yeah.
you are a black female, you're a black Bahamian female
Yeah.
in very senior leadership in a Canadian bank.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. How have you been able to hold on to family values and ascend at the same time? Because society has told us you can have either or.
Yeah.
You can either be a career woman or you can be a wife or a
Yeah.
mother or a boyfriend mother.
Yeah.
You shouldn't or can't have both because you won't be able to do both well. But I've been in banking for 29 years. I've been married for 26, 25-year-old son, 16-year-old daughter, looking like I'm only 12 years old.
Yay.
So something must have
Yeah.
gone right for you. How have you
Yeah.
been able to use family as the edifice versus the crutch?
Yeah. So I think it starts with understanding that there's a role in each of them, right? And the role that I have at work does not necessarily translate into the role that I have at home.
Okay.
So it starts there. From the marriage perspective, it really starts with the partnership, right? And having an appreciation for what do each of us do outside of just our aspirations, etc., outside of just being a husband or being a wife, right? No decision that I've made along my career journey did not go with his agreement and alignment of this is where we need to go, right? And same thing with him, right? So we made decisions together. Once we made those decisions together, then we remained committed to what those options were and what those opportunities were for me.
Wow.
I have moved between Abaco, Nassau, and Freeport probably at least maybe 5 to 6 times over the course of my career.
Yes.
And took my son with me along the way. So I had some fundamental rules. Fundamental rules was any career decision that I chose to make, my husband needed to support it and be in agreement with it. And then the second one was for my son. Anywhere that I could go, he needed to be able to go also. Because I never wanted him to look back and say, you know what, mommy left me behind for this.
Yes.
Right? And I had the naysayers. I had the naysayers along the way. I can tell you it's not easy. And I know, you hear women say, oh, I'm not going to leave my husband behind. Or nobody. People will do what they want to do, whether you're there or whether you're there or not. Right? So it was always about he was committed, I was committed. It made sense for our family. I had a strategy, and he was aligned with that strategy to say, you know what, if I'm going to get ahead, meaning then we are going to get ahead, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take some steps. And it wasn't easy, Ahmad, because human nature is that you get lonely.
Yes.
You definitely want to have that nuclear family and that support there, but they were sacrifices.
Yes.
And you didn't quite know where the sacrifice would lead us, right? But we knew that we were on a journey and we were committed to going through that journey. So that's how it works for me. It works with, ultimately, I remember one time, I don't know what it was. I must have had a bad day, right? I may have only been a branch manager at that time. And I walked into the house, and I must have been a little bit punchy, so to speak, right? And I came in, and he said, well, you better leave the bank outside the door because it's a different environment here.
Right.
And so he has no problem checking me.
Yes.
Right? And I appreciate it because at the end of the day, respect is everything.
Absolutely.
Respect is everything, and inclusive in the workplace, right? So that's kind of how we've had that journey together, and it's been good.
Excellent. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that support.
Yeah.
One, the alignment.
Yeah.
Right? Because aspiration can easily cause misalignment.
Yeah.
Well, I want to become so-and-so, and you holding me back. Why are you letting this man, mom? You was the same one who ain't got? All right, then.
Yes.
So, all right, okay. So you said alignment first.
Yeah.
And then we realized that whatever we do next is going to help our family.
Yeah.
It's going to elevate us as an institution.
Yeah, for sure.
Really. When did you, what was your journey like? You started the bank as what?
So I started as a part-time teller on the island of Abaco. So my intentions was, I actually had gotten accepted to do my A-levels. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
So if you were to find an old yearbook, you would probably see where I had it written, first female prime minister of the Bahamas, right?
Wow.
That was a former aspiration. But I wanted to go into law. I figured that would be the route. The context we had back in the day was most persons that went into politics
were lawyers.
They were lawyers. So I was accepted to do that. And but I also wanted to work a little bit to save some money. So I didn't really understand what banking was. It was straight out of high school. All right, it's a good, steady job, especially when you're thinking about being on the family island. So I lived in Nassau. Let me just go back for a second. I lived in Nassau for a certain portion of time during my early adolescence, right up to my early adolescence. And then my mom was a teacher. My father was the police. They had an opportunity. My mom was from Abaco, so we navigated to Abaco. So I finished up my secondary education in Abaco.
Okay.
And so walked into banking, Scotia. And when I walked into banking, I didn't really understand at that time how many opportunities existed. But when I got there, the first thing that I looked at after I understood was the branch manager's office, right?
Wow,
and I was like, I want to be there one day.
Yes.
That's what I said. And that was the most that I ever thought that I wanted to accomplish. So I was actually, for maybe the first 10 years of my career, just really pushing to strategically figure out how do I become a branch manager. On the island, I understood that only a couple of things could happen. Either somebody retired and all of the folks in there, they were still relatively young. God forbid somebody passed away, and that would be how you got a job.
Yes.
So I realized I needed to step out and go into the city to really start to build my skills and to be able to go out to come back in.
Yes.
Like branch manager Marsh Harbor was everything for me.
Yes.
So I made that decision, right? And I will tell you, and this is where I want to encourage a lot of young people, Ahmad, because I had the naysayers. People were like, "You won't survive in Nassau. There's so much, more employees there, and the competition is gonna be stiff." And this was a senior person telling me this.
Wow.
I heard stories around, women back in those days. They said women don't go into loans, right? Because loans are, you're married and it's too demanding, too many hours, and something inside me said, "You know what, Lasonya, you can do it." Now I don't know where it came from. Could have come from the things that my mom instilled in me from a very young little girl to say I could do anything. But I knew that at the end of the day, I wanted to try. So I took my 3-year-old son at that time,
Wow.
moved to Nassau, had my home, had my home in Abaco. My husband was still over there in Abaco working because it wasn't feasible for him to move.
Sure.
And I moved to Nassau, and I started off living with family, and then I lived with my best friend, who's my very best friend till this day, by the way. She's definitely what they call him, one of my ride or dies.
Yes.
But I lived with her, with my son, and went through that journey. Started doing school. It's University of the Bahamas now, but COB at night. And I went into that work environment, and I thrived. I thrived because I was committed to actually making the risk that I took actually pay off.
Yes.
And I can tell you there were nights where, not nights, but evenings where my son would be on the floor, laying down or doing homework, and I'm working, and I'm working, and I'm working. And the opportunity came where an opening came in Abaco, and I went back as an assistant manager.
Okay.
Right? So I was so proud of that. Went back as an assistant manager. Did well there. I was always driven to always want to achieve the best or the most. It was an early, my first people manager role at that time. Had to supervise people that supervised me before, which was an interesting dynamic. But again, I think even till this very day, I always start anything with being respectful and understanding that once you treat people the way you want to be treated, you're going to be fine.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that everybody brings an element of skill and insight to anything that they do. And if you're prepared to listen and be respectful to what somebody has to say, usually you'll get the same thing in return. So that was my first people manager role. And I did pretty well in that. And then I started to so I'm a person that if I get bored, then it wears on me. And so if I feel like I've mastered something, my desire is to see what's next. And I think even though I stayed in the same industry in terms of banking, there was always another role and another role and something to learn. And so I did the assistant manager role, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to be branch manager, so I always had this strategy for the school to be branch manager. What else do I need to learn? What else do I need to do? And so I wanted to understand a little bit more about commercial and small business, and an opportunity came. So I went back to Nassau.
Yes.
My husband signed, okay, good, we can do this. So I went back to Nassau. After I came back from Nassau, I got the branch manager position in Abaco. So I'm like, okay, good. All things are well. I'm home. This is exactly what I wanted. And then I got a call. So what was interesting was the first part of my career, I was chasing something. And I didn't even understand at that point that I was building my own brand while I was chasing something. It was just, I want to be the best. I want to do this well because I can see that if I do that, I'm going to get to what I want to accomplish. But I built my brand along that way when I got to the branch manager position. And so now it actually, the switch, it flipped. And people started calling me.
Wow.
So I got a call, right? Settled, I'm good. And I got a call. And I got a call to consider going into, at that time, what would have been the largest branch in that operation. I would have been the first woman to ever have the opportunity to do it. It was a complex and interesting dynamic. And so I went and I decided to take it. So when I took it, again, all family alignment in place. When I took it, I kid you not, I think this is probably one of the few times in my career that I panicked a little bit.
Wow.
Because I was like, what have I done? Can you really do this? I don't think in my memory, I could have recalled where somebody was extremely successful, right? And I'm like, what have you gotten yourself into?
Yes.
And I had a good friend at that time. They worked in the bank as well. And they said to me, Lasonya, always remember, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yes.
Just go in and just do what you need to do. And that has been when I went over, that's been one of my greatest career experiences in terms of really going there and really understanding and listening to where the opportunities were, getting to know the team. That was a dynamic and energetic group of people. So I did that. I got another call after that. So after that, I started getting calls. So I got another call after that, and they said, well, Lasonya, have you thought about HR? So I was adamant, no. I
Wow.
typically never said no,
Yes.
right, in my career. But I was like, no, not HR. I didn't understand the power of HR. I just thought it was, you know what? I'm the person in the front. I want to be in sales. I'm
Yes,
that
yes,
person that
yes.
want to be there facing the client. That's the energy. And I felt like HR was more administration, more operational. And so I said no 3 times.
Wow.
I said no 3 times. And they're like, no, Lasonya, you do not understand. This is and I said, you know what? They keep coming back. Let me give it a try.
Yeah.
That, Ahmad, to me, was what I needed to be my springboard to be an executive. Because they said to me, we want you to do HR because we see that you're good with people, right? Being good with people, in my opinion, wasn't just necessarily just being liked by people, but being balanced about
There is
how
a
you treat
difference.
people. There's a difference. There's a
Yes.
difference because for me, it's about you understand that when I give you feedback, I'm going to give you that feedback with candor. Once it comes with care, I'm
Yes.
doing that to help you along the way, right? And to support you in your own growth. So they said you're good with people. So I went into HR. That I learned about change. I stepped into a magnitude of change. I would call it baptized by fire. At that time, I didn't even realize what I was stepping into. But I stepped into a magnitude of change. So that challenged and stretched me. I got to understand a deeper appreciation of the people culture in an organization, not just how managers and employees think, but how executives think, right? I got to see the vision of a company 3-5 years out, right? And I also got to really understand how to bring executive presence to a role. And those
Yes.
were all of my introductions into that. And so it built a lot of confidence. I really got to the point where I felt like, okay, at this point, what am I going to do next? And when I got to that point, at that point, I think I had about maybe 21, 22 years in the
Wow.
organization at that time. And I said that at that point, I think I was seeing the glass ceiling.
Okay.
It really wasn't that I was seeing the glass ceiling, but in my mind I was seeing it because
Okay.
I felt like others were being developed for the role that I wanted.
Okay.
And I believed that when I got to that point, that I could have actually achieved like a managing director or a vice president role. But what I didn't do, and this is a critical mistake that I think many women need to be aware of, was I didn't say what I wanted. Right? What I did was I made assumptions and I was like, okay, people are really being prepared for this role. I'm not. And so I saw an opportunity to go to the organization where I am now, right? And so when I was leaving, I think one of the hardest things I've ever done was actually to resign.
Wow.
To me, because I loved it. I grew up there as a child. And when I walked in and I resigned, one of the critical piece of feedback that came to me was, and I said, I didn't think I was going to be going anywhere and getting ahead to where I wanted to go. And they said, you never asked.
Wow.
You never said what you wanted. And I left that knowing that anywhere and anything else that I did, I needed to be clearer on where I wanted to go. And there was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing wrong with it once you were prepared to work and do what you needed to do to get there. So that was my journey. So when I walked into where I am now, RBC, I was very clear about, and being clear about it doesn't mean that you're going to get it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But I was very clear about what my future career aspirations were. And because I was clear about it, I believe that leaders were able to help me to map out a plan to get there. So I had a part to play and my leaders had a part to play. So I went on that journey. I was able to get the job to be the head of RBC in Bahamas as managing director. And
So you left the HR director role
yes.
and assumed the managing director role.
No. So when I left the HR role, I went to RBC and then I actually assumed an area vice president of branches role.
Okay.
But I knew that ultimately I wanted to
Yes.
achieve the managing director goal. So I went in and I was responsible for 7 branches when I started. And then I think I ultimately went up to about 12, right? And then I started to really prepare myself and to get upskilled adequately for the managing director role, right? Then after that, they're like, okay, she looks like she's pretty good with leadership, so let's give her a little bit more and a little bit more. And I love that concept of, we're not going to pile everything on you, but you
Yes.
have the potential. Let's see how we can phase this in and how you do, right? And so after managing director, then I took on responsibility for Turks and Caicos. Then after Turks and Caicos, I actually took on responsibility for Finco. Yeah.
Wow.
So I did that, went through a lot of experiences there, a lot of first times, like, understanding how to navigate the experiences of probably the greatest storm recorded in our history, Dorian. That was an interesting experience. I was able to chair the Clearing Banks Association at the time that was happening. So that was a lot of wealth of knowledge and experience there. Going through COVID, right, at the time that I was MD. So, and then, 4 months ago, got another good call. And they said, Lasonya, we're going to promote you to regional vice president for Caribbean.
We're going to promote you.
We're promoting you. So
We're not asking you to apply
No.
or consider
No.
this. Mom, effective this date.
yes,
This is what's
you
going to
will
happen
be.
for you.
Yeah.
Lasonya, I want to pause there for a second because you've taken us along a journey of 0.5 teller.
Yeah.
In our language, that means part-time teller.
Yes.
You're working like twice, 3 days out of the week, and you were working for 4 hours on
Yeah.
those days. You weren't
Yeah.
working a full 8:30 to 4:30 shift.
No.
So you came in at like 10, you left at like
Yeah.
1, and that was your day. To now, the last call being, hey, Lasonya, we're going to promote you to A, B, and C.
Yep.
You also referenced the term strategy a lot
Yeah.
in your discussion so far. You've said
Yeah.
that I had a strategy. How do you go from chasing for 10 years
Yeah.
to being sought after for the last 21?
Yeah.
Or 19?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I think being very intentional in terms of first of all, paying attention to those who were successful, right? Because everything has a roadmap.
Yes.
You just have to figure out how do you fit it out to make it your own, right? So I would look and I would say, I would start, like you said, part-time teller. First of all, you got to be the one to show up, right?
Yes.
So I would be at my Grammy's house by the phone because there was no cell phone I didn't have a cell phone at that time, and I would wait for the phone to ring,
Wow.
right? And they always knew that if they needed that part-time teller, they could call
You were
Lasonya.
coming.
There were other part-time tellers,
Yes.
but Lasonya was going to come, and I was always going to be available. So showing up and being present and making sure that I'm always available, they realize, okay, this young lady is going to be committed about her, or serious about what she's going to do. But then I also paid attention, like, how did this person become successful? What was it that they did, right? And I started to understand that, okay, if I'm going, so from a strategic perspective, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to need to do the same things.
Yes.
I'm also going to need to be the best
Yes.
at what I do, right? I had the headwind, and unfortunately back then more so than now, there was a significant headwind of being a woman. That's just the reality of it, right? And so I did have those headwinds as well. So I knew that I didn't have the luxury of being second or being third in anything. I needed to really just ultimately be the best.
Outshine everybody.
Outshine everyone.
Wow.
And so that was a lot in terms of my strategy. So your name gets out there. Your name is starting to work for you, right? And a lot of it, I say strategic, I say intentional when I look back now, but a lot of it, I was just doing it and just being me, right? Just being me. The strategy kicked in when I got to a certain point to understand that I really needed strategy,
Yes,
right? I
yes.
really, like when I got to that manager level and really starting to think now, okay, what else do you need to do to really get to the C-suite as you referenced, right? Or the executive suite. That's when my strategy really kicked in to say, okay, you've done all of this, but when you think about the others around the table and what they have, what do you need, right? So that's when I stepped
Where's the gap?
into exactly where's the gap, right? And so that's when I stepped into pursuing my master's degree, right? And I'm like, okay, so you got your master's, you learned a lot along the way with that. What else do you need? How do you elevate, right? And so then I got another master's in sales leadership, et cetera, right? And so that's where the strategy kicked in. What also kicked in at that point was to understand that meritocracy got you all the way here. Like your good works, how hard you work got you all the way here. But you also need to understand that along with that meritocracy, you do need to know how to network,
Yes.
how to navigate, how to speak for yourself. I call it good politics. There's good politics
Yes,
and there's
yes,
bad
yes.
politics, right? But I call it good politics. Like at some point now, you have to show what you're capable of, and there's nobody to do it for you. There's
But you.
nobody to speak for you, right? You
Yes.
need to speak for yourself. You need to position yourself. So I think I just kind of picked that up along the way, the strategy piece. But that's essentially how I did it.
When you think of being the young female outshining everybody else,
Yeah.
how did you navigate the cattiness and the all that comes along with that? Because I feel
Yeah.
like you're glorifying it a little bit. When I say
Yeah,
glorifying it, I
yeah.
mean like, I worked hard, I had a strategy.
Yeah.
Lasonya, I believe
Yeah.
that as a male overachiever or
Yeah.
high performer, you get flack. You
Yeah.
get flack for being the best,
Oh, yeah. I
right?
ignore it.
Okay.
Unless you're physically harming me, I'm not going to let you get into my mental, right?
that.
So I ignore it. When I see that, I look at it as the issue with the person
Indeed.
versus the issue with
It
me.
is certainly a personal challenge for me
Exactly.
when I try to project on you.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So when you are faced, which I'm sure you will be, with adversity for those in the world that are trying to say you're
Yeah.
doing too much. I had a person one time ago in 2021, I believe. Every time I turn on my LinkedIn, you popping up.
Yeah.
Why are you doing so much? And I thought to myself, how very unfortunate for you.
Exactly.
And then I verbalized it.
Yeah.
And I said to them, I'm so sorry that you feel so threatened by my ability to do what God asked me to do or called me to do in the earth. I
Exactly.
really pray one day that you walk in God's truth for you. And there was a moment of like disdain, frustration, I
Yeah.
shame, I
Yeah.
don't know what to do. And I said, this is not to do that to you
Yeah.
now. I want you to really hone in on what God has called you to do. Why would you, instead of saying, Ahmad, how have you? Say, why would you? I want us to elevate the way we think about
Yeah.
success and the way we think about people who we know are successful, will never tell
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Right? How did you go, Lasonya, from realizing, okay, I see these people around the table, they have something that I don't necessarily have right now, I need to get it. Was that a matter of, hey, Susan, how did you get this? Or was it a matter of like
Yeah.
looking at Susan and saying, okay, she has this pillow and that thing?
Yeah.
Or how was that for you?
Sometimes it was a combination of both, right? It was a combination of both. Some people I admired from afar and I liked the way that they did things. Then other people I really reached in and really tried to get that level of mentorship and insight, right? When people see that you're coachable and you're open to receiving, believe it or not, Ahmad, they pour into
give.
you. They pour
They
into
give.
you. And that's
I want
what
to
it
pause
was.
on that point, Lasonya. When people see,
Yeah.
people, and you use the word see, but they really mean feel. You really mean feel.
Yeah.
When people feel like you are coachable,
Yeah.
and are willing to receive that feedback, because it's not going to be all you want to hear all the time.
No.
Especially when, if you were like me, who would allow the fact that I knew I could
Yeah.
to overshadow what that would take.
Exactly.
Because I don't need to know this, miss. I know what I'm doing. Versus, you know what, I've not done this yet.
Yeah.
She is doing it now, has done it before. Let me
Exactly.
listen. Let me just take it in. When people see or feel that you are coachable or
Yeah.
willing to receive whatever they give you, they will definitely give you more.
Yep.
Versus, since you know it all, mom, do it all.
Exactly. People called it, they said, Lasonya, one of your best gifts is that you have a spirit of humility,
Wow.
right? That spirit of humility allows people to come into you and share with you. You don't have to feel like, if I ask you a question and show you that I don't know, there's nothing wrong with
Yes,
that.
yes.
Because I don't know everything. I
Yes.
won't know everything. And people pour into you. But if you step into the room and you come off as the person with the arrogance and the know-it-all, then people are going to shut down.
Definitely.
So I found that I've had a lot of leaders over the course of my career, but I can tell you, like most of them, like 98% of them, I would say,
Wow.
have always been leaders that were willing to pour into me and to actually help me to grow and to understand. To your earlier point about those that work against you sometimes, we all have a spirit of discernment.
Yes.
And we all know, and the energy can tell us when somebody is for us or they're just pretending. And I've had those instances. I've overheard people talking about me by accident.
Wow.
By accidentally going back to the phone and hearing them talk about me. And I call them out, I don't have a challenge with that. I would be like,
Yes.
I heard that conversation. But guess what? That's okay.
Yes.
I don't treat them any differently.
Indeed.
At the end of the day, I'm aware, but I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to actually return that same type of behavior. What is it Michelle Obama said? When they
When
go
you go
low,
low, we go high.
Exactly. So that's my approach, right? I have known of scenarios where even in the early days of my career, persons actually sabotaged my opportunity to get accolades. Like, you used to have things like Employee of the Year and all of those things. And I knew there was a whole conspiracy. Why? Because I do my work with excellence. I do nothing against you, but I do my work with excellence.
Yes.
And those same people, Ahmad, I trained them how to be
Wow.
in the roles that I was
Wow.
in, right? Because that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
That's on them. You keep moving forward. You will never have a perfect scenario
Mm-hmm.
in life where everybody likes you.
Absolutely.
Everybody doesn't have to like
And
you.
I feel too in leadership, if you are trying to be liked by everyone, you will be successful at nothing.
Yeah, that's the biggest mistake you can make,
Absolutely.
actually, to look to be like. What you look for is you look to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
You do what's right and you're fair to people, and the like will come. Who's
Yes.
supposed to like you will
Will.
like you. You know what I
Exactly
mean?
right.
The respect will come.
Yes.
But you just treat people fairly, and if that's the fundamental, you're good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You talked about the awareness. How did you not allow awareness to cause you to attack or to antagonize or even
Yeah.
to withdraw?
So there's one skill that even as I, went into more senior roles that I've worked hard on, and I learned this when I did my master's. They said to be a global leader, there are 3 things that you should have: IQ, CQ, and EQ.
Yes.
Right? EQ is the hardest one.
Definitely.
I've met many intelligent people, far more
Oh my
intelligent than I
goodness, and they are
am.
just
Yes. People who have been globe trotters.
Yes.
But you have to have EQ. And the first component, or a big component of EQ, is self-awareness.
Definitely.
Right? And then you self-control. Right? Once you know what's going to make you tick and that's what's going to frustrate you, then you calm that down
Yes.
internally.
Yes.
And you don't let people see that they can get to you with the things that they're trying. Because once people see your trigger, then they're gonna
It's like
take you out of your spot.
if you use the bank for example, you tell the public
Yeah.
what the code is for the vault.
Yeah.
Who will not use the code?
Absolutely.
If I need a couple $1 million this evening and I know the
Absolutely.
code, I'm going to try to get that code and get that money.
Yeah.
If you show people this is the button you press to get this
Yeah.
reaction. You press this
Exactly.
button when you want me to be sweet. Press the one you want me to be a banshee. Whatever
Exactly.
button you show me, I will press. Human beings are creatures
Yeah.
of opportunity. And so when you say to me, this is the
Yeah.
button you press to rile me up, or watch me press that
Yeah.
button every day in the same way to get, and then
will
watch
do
me say
it.
to somebody else, see what I tell you? I tell
Exactly.
you she's this, I tell you she's that.
Exactly.
So that strength, Lasonya, how have you then been able to maximize that over the course of your career?
Yeah, I do. So I've been able to do that by, first of all, I prepare as much as I can
Okay.
before I go into any, especially professional environment, right? And what do I mean by prepare? I mean by understanding who my audience is, right? Understanding who's around the table, getting an appreciation for everybody comes around the table with their own objectives.
Yes.
Humans are self-serving.
Definitely.
Right? But trying to get an appreciation of if we're coming around the table to solve a problem, then what angle is this person going to come at versus this one? What's their ultimate goal, and understanding that? And so I go into a room with an appreciation as much as possible for what everyone is doing or everybody may want to achieve. And then I feel from that aspect that, okay, I have some sense of control or understanding. So when somebody says something, I try my best to connect that to what is it that they are actually trying to achieve, right? For themselves or for their people or their teams. And so preparation for me kind of helps me to keep my own, I guess, level of control and to just remain really self-aware of what's going on in my environment and in my room.
That's good.
Yeah.
You have had several progressively senior roles.
Yes.
Right? You have had a unique path because there are some people who have had to go back. Like you said, you had to
Yeah.
leave to come back.
Yeah.
But in each case, it was still a progression.
Yeah.
Right? When did you realize that the roles had changed? Because you talk about the
Yeah.
switch. When did you realize that, wait a minute, I didn't look for this.
Yeah.
What do you think happened? What transpired?
Yeah.
What took place for the roles to be reversed in that way?
I think at that point, my good works, honestly, I think, or what I had strived and accomplished, accolades or just strong, solid performance, started to work for itself, right? It's almost like anything you invest in, eventually it's going to start to yield its return. So I think I started to get a return on my investment. And the best people to speak for you are your people.
Yes.
Right? When your people speak for you, that's a little bit different than just having a sponsor maybe or a mentor, which is good too for them to speak to you. But when your team starts sharing, they start sharing with their peers, and then it actually becomes, pretty much, I won't call it, I guess today you'll call it viral, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's what it was. I think that at the end of the day, I had done enough for people to see, you know what, she's authentic. She's capable of doing it because we checked the box and she's been able to accomplish all of these goals. So now let's reach out to her because we need this. We need this
Yes.
type of behavior. We need this type of leader in an organization. And it just started going from there, right? I came into my own as well to understand that my options are broader than I saw them initially. And I think that confidence started to come, quiet confidence, right? But the confidence started to come to say, you know what? I'm good because guess what? I'm doing this now because I love this. I'm doing this
Yes.
because I want to be here. I'm doing this because it fits right into where I want to be and where I want to go right now. But I don't have to stay here. I have options, right? I have options. And so once you get to that place, then you start to be a lot more comfortable as to how you navigate and just things just start coming your way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As you've continued to ascend in the role of leadership and in these progressively senior roles,
Yeah.
what has been your experience
Yeah.
with taking on roles that typically were held by men?
Yeah.
How were you received as you elevated your career?
And I'm going to answer the question to men, but what I've learned to do is to not even pay attention to who was there before me, who my predecessor was, because if I do that, then I get caught into their energy and their space.
Absolutely.
There was a very big senior person who I was their successor coming into RBC, and they're fantastic. Still very well engaged with them today. But I realize, people say, well, you have big shoes to fill. No, I don't have big shoes to fill.
don't.
I'm walking in my own shoes.
Indeed.
Right? Those are my shoes.
Say that again, Lasonya.
I'm walking in my own shoes. I
Indeed.
don't have big shoes to fill,
Absolutely.
right? Because if you start to get to that point of trying to fill someone else's shoes, you've already lost the game.
Absolutely.
Because their footprint is theirs, right? So for me,
It's so good.
it was always about understanding, Lasonya, this is your time. This is your space where you're supposed to lead. And this is something here that you have to add. You're adding value. There's some gems that you need to drop to the
Yes.
teams here. And then you too will move on.
Yes.
You too will no longer have this opportunity and move into something else. So I always take it from that space. I've never been intimidated by male leaders.
Okay.
In terms of who was there before or who's been around me. I shouldn't say never. I would say definitely at this point in life. Maybe I was in the early days. But because everybody brings something. I think that women have a certain way about themselves that adds love and nurturing and care to leadership. And men may be a bit more practical,
Absolutely.
right? Which might be what is needed at that time in that space. Yeah. But I think there's maybe a bit of a misconception that because you're a woman, because you come with a place of care, like we tend to hear women are emotional. Women are no more emotional than men are, right? But I think the question sometimes comes, can she actually run a business? Can she actually make tough decisions? Yes. Yes. But it's not in what you do, it's how you do it.
How you do it.
It's the
always
how
the
you
how.
do it. It's the how you do it.
When you think, Lasonya, of the decisions that you've had to make that perhaps kept you up at night or
Yeah.
maybe made you feel like, geez,
Yeah.
I can't believe you have to do this next week or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you get to the point of making those decisions
Yeah.
and still wake up tomorrow and progress and continue?
You do it with a heart, right? You do it with compassion. You do it with trying to solve absolutely everything that you can solve to make that decision that you have to make easier,
Okay.
right? You try to be as fair as possible. Like I always say, let's use something like as it relates to assessing somebody's performance, et cetera, like that, right? My fundamental goal is you should never know that there is a challenge with your performance. There's a challenge with something that you're doing in the workplace. That should never be a surprise to you.
Yes.
There's a journey to where you should know that, right? So you should never be blindsided if a tough decision has to be made in that respect,
Sure,
right?
sure.
The other thing that you do is you really try to tell people why. Why is this decision being made, right? And to really give clarity, and then to also hopefully give options when you can give options, yeah? But there's just going to be a time where I always say, we don't own these organizations
Yes.
that we work for, but we
Yes.
do our best to lead them and to meet the objectives of the organizations. Sometimes they do have the impact of tough decisions that have to be made, but I think you just always have to have that human element at the forefront of it when it has to be done. And you know what I liken it to as well? I liken it to the fact that one day that decision could be made on me,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And I have to accept and understand that as well,
Yes.
right? And so I try to tell people things like, how do you prepare yourself, not just for here, but how do you prepare yourself for outside
Yes.
of the organization? What are things that you're doing to upskill yourself and to get yourself ready for any opportunity? Because I don't think anybody should suggest, like, kind of keep themselves tied to this is everything for me. This institution is the end all be all exactly for me, right? You should always be thinking about that continuous learning and how do I grow and how do I make myself more marketable? How do I diversify my skills, right? So we don't need to put ourselves in a box.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You talked about denying the role for HR 3 times. Where was that coming from? I know you mentioned you thought one was more, results driven, and you were able to impact and engage in a different way with the sales function. And then one was more paper pushing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind the first time they called, the second time they called, and the third time they called?
So the first time they called, and it was dropped like, you should think about it. So it was dropped casually, like, and I was like, I was enjoying what I was doing so much, and I was seeing progress, and I felt like director of sales was going to be my thing, and there was so much energy around that, right? The very thing that I think people might run away from in sales, I embrace, right? Those things. So I enjoyed really having those obstacles to overcome. So I felt like HR was just going to be softer, right? A softer landing. Pure misconception, full misconception. So that was the second time. The first time. The second time, thought about it, I'm like, okay, this is starting to sound a little bit more serious, right? So I gave it a little bit of thought. But again, it just was not where I had my alignment for my own personal career goals. So I continued to push back. When I got the third call, then I was like, and then it might have been who called at the third call too. Had some impact to that as well.
Yes.
But when I got the third call, I'm like, okay, Lasonya, this is getting serious now. You really need to think about it. So what I did was I did some research. At that point, I did research. I went and I said, okay, if you're coming to me, and this is me saying now, I'm at the front of the business, I'm not the classic HR practitioner, then there must be something that you want, right, that I can bring to the role. This is what I'm saying generally. So I went and I did some research, and I went and I really started to understand how HR was evolving from what I thought it was to what it actually should be in terms of really being that strategist, that people's strategist to help an organization achieve its mission, its vision, all of those things, right?
Yes.
And I even saw that at the C-suite level, the HR is probably the head of HR is probably the most critical person for the CEO, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then it started to evolve my thinking, and I'm like, okay, now I understand, right? And to be able to do that, to align people, you need to know the business.
Yes.
Right? You need to understand the business. You need to feel what the people feel in the business. So after I did the research, I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be a good move. And so I kind of went back in and said, okay, I'll do it.
And that transition for you was what? If you could sum it up in one word, how was that? Moving from high energy, targets, driven, all that stuff, to hearing the needs, but then also acting on those needs now.
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference, right?
It was. So it was a lot, right? I didn't expect it to be a lot, which I enjoyed, but it was a major challenge just coming in because I actually walked into a lot of change, a magnitude of change, and change that I didn't know that I was going to walk into for confidentiality reasons. So I walked into a magnitude of change. So I don't think I even missed the beat in terms of being bored or thinking that I didn't have a lot in front of me, because that's a part of what I thought. But the biggest transition for me was in my prior environments, I could make decisions really quickly because I knew what needed to be done. And it was more of just execute, get it done, get the business achieved. There I had to be more thoughtful because when decisions were made, there were people behind those decisions. There was organizational reputation behind those decisions.
Yes.
So for me, it opened my thinking to be, Lasonya, before you can make a decision, there are many factors that you have to look at to make this decision. And is this the right decision based on those factors? So it slowed me down. It slowed me down in a very thoughtful and intentional way to say, you know what, pause here and see who this and how this impacts the business.
So you were in that role for how long? How many?
18 months.
18 months, short time.
18 months. It was a short time. It was a short time. I was just in my office one day, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting it. And I opened up the papers, and I saw the opportunity that I went into. And I said, you know what? Let me see what's happening over on this side of town. But 18 months. It wasn't very long.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was one of the most instrumental parts, I think, in my career that really helped me to propel to the next.
When you saw the opportunity, for you, I don't know if you're like me, when I know when something is the thing.
Yeah.
Was that it for you in that situation
Yes,
as well?
it was. And you get confirmation in different ways.
God, it's so good.
Right? So I saw it. And I said, okay, this is interesting, right? And again, let me go back to what women do. We try to check all the boxes to see, do I have everything? We don't necessarily always say, you know what, let me take a risk and do this, right?
Yes.
But this particular job, I actually didn't get the job that I saw on the paper.
Okay.
This particular job, I'm like, okay, you could do this. You could do this. That's what I said to myself. And then things started to happen around me. I traveled. I ended up having coffee chats with an executive, and they just said some things that told me in my spirit, Lasonya, maybe it's time for you to think about really stepping into what you saw in the newspaper. And then there were like a couple of things that happened like that, right? People said certain things, or I saw certain things. Okay, it's time to take the step.
Sure.
And if you know what? What's the worst that can happen? You're still here, right? But if you get the opportunity, now is the time to go. And I cried. I might as well tell you, I cried like a baby when I left. I really cried like a baby because that was like a whole chapter of my life. But I will tell you that God has been good.
He is.
He has been good.
When you get now to the point where, so you left that role to area vice president.
Yeah.
You said.
Yeah.
Is that your first executive role, or would you consider the HR role?
HR would have been the first executive role. Okay. So HR would have been where I had the opportunity to do my first board presentation, right? Nervous to the T, shaking, you know, but I was able to have that experience. I did more like public speaking internally to the teams, but in larger forums, right?
Yes.
So I got my teeth cut in that HR, role. Right? Wow, so by the time I went to the area vice president role, I may not have been perfect, but I had a little bit of that under me. So HR was definitely the executive one. And then I kind of, I was developed to really understand how to be in a boardroom.
Yes.
How to, and the thing that I learn is go in, listen, understand, then determine where you insert your knowledge, your value.
Your gifting, your ability.
My abilities,
wow.
But don't go in, blazing and think my grandma always used to say, nobody know how dumb you are until you open your mouth.
My Lord, that's a word.
She used to always say that. You don't know.
Nobody knows how dumb you are until you open your mouth.
Yeah, so if you don't know anything, just keep quiet.
Yes.
Learn, and then then you're going to figure it out later. Yeah.
You don't know how dumb you are until you open your mouth.
You don't know.
Especially when you're talking about.
If you don't know what you're talking about.
I had a similar, experience when I was in college one time giving a presentation. And I was always a person who thought, say the most, and you could be the smartest.
Yeah.
And my professor said to me, sir, none of this was necessary.
Right.
You had to speak on this. Why are you speaking on that, those, them, and this?
Yeah.
One thing. Second of all, what you speak on is what I can ask you about.
Yeah.
So if you say something that you have no idea how to explain or give clarity on, you open me in, you invite me to say, ask me about so-and-so.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Exactly.
Because you would never thought about what to ask me if I didn't give you the thought first. So I only speak, Lasonya, on what I know I can speak on unequivocally.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's me too.
You can't invite me to a construction conference to talk about how to build a house. Mom, now if you're talking about the people experience as we build a house.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the journey to build, man, I got that.
Exactly.
But the nail in the hammer, no son, no mom.
Yeah. That is extremely powerful.
Yes.
And to be okay with the fact that you're not going to be the subject matter
I'm
expert
not the jack of all
for
trades.
everything. Exactly. You're not.
When did you realize that was a superpower, though? Because
Yeah.
to be a woman and realize that and then exercise that
Yeah.
is different than a man say, oh, well, I have
Yeah.
a guy who I could call to know,
Yeah.
or I could Google this, versus
Yeah.
a woman being considered unworthy or all of these things. How did you
Yeah.
realize that was more of a strength versus an opportunity?
I think it was when I came into understanding what I was truly good at, right? And understanding that I didn't have to be good at everything, but I had to validate what I really knew that I was good at, and to really define that. And people validate that for you sometimes.
Yes.
People tell you, you know what, you're really good at this, or you're really sharp here in this space, and then I just perfect that, right? And stay in my lane, right? I just allow others to talk. And then if I'm curious about something,
Yes.
I position it more from a question, not that I know more than you, but I'm curious. You mentioned that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes.
Now, my thought process may be that may not be accurate, but I'm not offending you
Yes.
in the same token, right? And just knowing how to actually pull information that you need, or the validity of what a person is saying, by actually just showing them that you're curious about it and you want them to expand on it.
Yes.
And I can't come and tell you that I know for a fact that it's not the case, because I'm not the expert.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So positioning, I think I learned how to pretty much just position things that I needed to know, or things that I was not the expert on, and I just stayed in my area where I knew that I was better at.
So now you are area vice president. The call comes, hey, Lasonya.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, you didn't apply for the MD role?
So the MD role wasn't the role that I went into. It wasn't an MD role.
No, that was the
and I did,
area vice president one.
and I didn't apply. So within that's a bit of a difference from, I would say, Scotia, right? So more of those roles you applied for. Other roles, there was the liberties to say, you know what, this role can be appointed. And you know what, I appreciate that, because sometimes you pretty much, organizations go through succession planning. They know the talent that they have.
Yes.
And if you've identified a core talent, then just say it, right?
Yes.
And be clear about it. So it was I didn't apply for it, but it was through the progress of my development. I think by the time that I got it was clear that
Yes,
I
this
was
was the
going to be
next
the
step.
candidate. Yeah, because I was pulled into different forums. I was able to speak at employee town halls. I was doing a lot of public speaking on behalf of the business. I was already a part of board meetings, etc. So you could almost kind of see the development happening, and then I transitioned into the role. At the appropriate time, announcements were made, etc. Yeah.
You talked about when you joined the bank and you realized that's what I want. I want the branch manager function. Millions, I can't even describe the amount of, I guess the how much you've outdone that, right?
Yeah.
When did you feel like, when did it hit you that you were like the managing director of a global organization?
Yeah.
That is a huge deal, Lasonya.
It
It
is,
is.
yeah.
It is something that people will never be able to imagine for themselves.
Yeah.
Much less women.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to say that women can't be it. I'm just saying
It's a harder
it's something
journey.
that anyone would be like, boy, managing director,
Yeah.
that's for Tingham now.
Yeah.
Versus I can actually do this. When did it hit you that I am Lasonya Missick, wife and mother, but also I run this place? Like,
When I was sitting in the big office.
yeah.
And I was like, and I sat in this big office. I'm not a person big on offices
Sure,
like that, right?
sure.
But I sat in the big office, and I'm like, this is a big office, and I feel alone and empty, and then
Wow.
in this big office.
Yes.
But it's the office that we always saw and knew growing up as the
Wow.
office of the MD, the big
Yes,
corner office.
yes.
You know, and so when I sat there, to me, that was the first reality of it. Like, wow, okay.
This
and I
is it.
remember, like, as a young girl, just seeing the managing directors move through the organizations, and I'm like, that's a big responsibility, right? But it shows you what's possible.
Yes.
Through diligence, and that anything is possible for anyone once you're committed to doing it, right? It's like, it can
Let's
be
talk
done.
about those two words, the possibility and the responsibility. I
Yeah.
am a huge proponent of personal responsibility.
Yeah,
Nothing that I have or don't have is not my fault.
yeah,
Nothing.
absolutely.
I do not care what has happened to me,
Yeah.
through me, for me, around me. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have it. Now,
Yeah.
that's not to say that I've caused it to happen. It's simply
Yeah.
saying that people only do what they are allowed to do, Lasonya.
Yes.
In any instance.
Yeah.
people can only do what they've been allowed to.
Yeah.
And what I've been allowed to do, I get better at every time I get to do it.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Right? If that sweet, loving, doting, considerate husband of yours, or you vice versa,
Yeah.
did something once that you feel like, wait a minute. And your first thing was to call your sister instead of telling him, hey, brother, what's going on here? Or vice versa. Him
Yeah.
saying to you, love, what to do? That little bang issue right
Yeah.
outside, yeah?
Yeah.
Right outside.
Exactly.
If he hadn't checked you, it would have been every night slamming up the place and carrying on.
Exactly.
And then what was supportive and conducive and aligned becomes
Yeah.
now constrained and restrictive
Yeah.
and rigid.
I agree.
Right? When you think of that responsibility that comes with, wow, it's a big office and it's a big title and all of these things. Because people see Lasonya Missick, man, regional vice this and
Yeah.
wow, that must be so good.
Yeah.
And I shared in another episode before where people want to have what you have, but they don't want to do what you did. Right? And they
Yes.
don't understand that that
Yeah.
is a huge part of arriving or getting
Yeah.
to these positions.
It
What has
is.
the responsibility meant to you, Lasonya? To be literally in charge of or directing people's lives.
Yeah. So it starts off by understanding how much an organization has trusted you, right, with this level of responsibility.
Wow.
And the impact that you can have on others actually achieving the same goals and more, right? Like other women,
Yes.
other Bahamians,
Yes,
other
yes.
Blacks, right? Achieving that and more. If you mess it up, right? If you mess it up, then you make it difficult or twice as difficult for others to get there and to even go further. So that's the greatest responsibility for me that I carry when I have it. I had a former boss that said once, they said, enjoy the prestige and title of a position for like 5 minutes.
Yes.
That's the romance of it. Now get to the work.
Get to work.
Get to the work. That's what you're there for,
Wow.
right?
Get to work.
And leave all of that behind. And that's something that I traveled with as well. But even in the role that I'm in now, right, being the first Bahamian to have this regional role, because I cover 10 countries in the Caribbean.
Lasonya.
Yeah.
1, 2, I can take my time to count to
Yeah.
10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
Yeah.
countries.
10 countries in the
You have
Caribbean.
direct oversight of.
Oversight for what we call a line of business, so
Sure.
personal and private banking for 10 countries.
Which is
So-
the lifeblood of any bank.
Absolutely.
Be
You
very
know-
clear about
You know
that.
banking for sure, right?
Wow.
38 branches, 9 private banking centers. And to have that as a Bahamian woman, that carries a magnitude of responsibility
Indeed.
for me. And for me, I have no choice but to be successful.
No choice.
No choice. Because at the end of the day, there are others watching. There's
Wow.
others who want to aspire to that.
Yes.
Whether they're 10 years old or whether they're just a few years behind me. And so that's the responsibility that I take with it. And that's what drives me now at this point to say, you know what? You've got to do a great job. Do your best.
I have no choice. I have no choice but to do this.
Yeah.
When you think this was the call that they called you and said, hey, Sonny,
It's time.
what you saying? What you thinking
Yeah.
about so and so?
Yeah.
Were there conversations leading up to this? Was this another one
Yeah.
of those developmental? Okay, we're priming
Yeah.
you, we're preparing you for what's next, or
This
was
one
it?
was a bit of a surprise. Like I always knew I was being prepared for senior
Sure.
roles, senior leadership. That for sure I knew that I was being prepared for something else, right? This particular role itself, no, right? Not necessarily. But I don't back down from I
Sure.
don't back down from challenges unless I know extremely like this is just
Not gonna be.
well outside of my skill set, right? But once I know it's within my skill set and I'm still gonna grow from it,
Yes.
I take it. But once I take it, once I make that decision to take it, then I can't fail.
Yes.
Right? I can't fail because then there are others who are expecting me to be successful because through my success, I make it easier for them.
Wow.
I make it easier for them. Someone said to me a few years, like my 5, 7, no, longer than that. Maybe about 8, 9 years ago, they said that there was a particular rule that they would never give to another woman.
Wow.
Because the woman before was not successful in that role.
Wow.
And that resonated with me. I'm like, okay, we don't understand that what we do either opens the doors for others or we can close it and shut it down because people they have their views on whatever experiences they had before.
And
with
they make
others.
those assumptions and they make them last.
Yeah.
I truly feel like something about this year, 2024, Lasonya, I think that whatever happens to anyone in this year,
Yeah.
this is my personal conviction and I kind of a revelation from the Holy Spirit, is going to affect the next 3 to 4 generations.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. You cannot
is.
take for granted when God creates these opportunities for us.
Yeah.
For someone who started off as a 0.5 teller in a branch on a family island
Yeah.
in the Bahamas,
Yep.
to say to herself, I want to be a branch manager one day, to then be someone that they're calling
Yeah.
to say, hey, how about managing 38 of them instead?
Yeah.
How about doing it across 10 countries?
Never
How about
could
doing it across
imagine.
9 different...
Yeah.
What? At the same time, saying the responsibility is not for me to succeed, to say Lasonya was
Yeah.
successful. It's so
Right.
that somebody else could say that they were instead.
Exactly.
That is leadership, Lasonya.
Thank you.
That is the epitome of doing this because somebody else might get a chance to after me. That is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's what it is, Samad, because I always stand from the place of we're never here forever. So what is our true purpose?
Yes.
Right? What is it? It's what we leave behind. It's the opportunities we leave behind. Leadership is a gift of the Spirit.
Literally.
God gives us the leadership as one of our gifts.
Wow.
So if it's one of our gifts, then it has to be somewhere along there that we're empowering others to win and to be
Indeed.
beneficial from it as well. So one of my greatest my joys is to actually see how people who I would have worked with, they come up and they move and they will tell you. I really believe they would. They will tell you that my goal is to pour into them.
Wow.
I usually try to go from a perspective of you don't have to necessarily experience what I experienced, so let me help you.
Yes,
Right? When you're
yes.
around the table and you're communicating this way, don't do it that way because this is how people are thinking about it when you say it and how you say it.
Yes.
Right? Show up right.
Yes.
Right? Bring your executive presence. These are things that weren't clearly said to me, but I use every opportunity to say it to others.
somebody else.
Because that just makes it a little bit easier.
Just a little bit easier.
Just a little bit
It's like having the
easier.
Cliff Note version of the movie.
Exactly.
You know, like, look, do this, consider this.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, here's the risk.
Here's the
right?
risk.
Still be you, still be your natural
Yeah.
best version of you. But I can tell you, as someone being, and I remember when I was training to be a loan officer, and the lady that was training me was making me do these things that I felt was like, miss. This has nothing to do
Yeah.
with being a loan officer. And what she was trying to do was to break my breaking point.
Ah.
You were going to deal with people, young man, who need you
Yeah.
for today. The moment you get them what they're looking for, fire
On.
on you.
That's
like
true.
they're on to you.
Yeah.
But you're gonna also have to be a version of yourself that you've not yet met
Yeah.
in order to do what you've not yet done.
That's true.
And I couldn't understand that initially. And my
Yeah.
grandmother, she said to me, Ahmad, why are you fighting this process so hard? Why are you fighting the point to the
Yeah.
point where you feel like you're gonna be in your own way?
Yeah.
Right? And I was young and I was promising and I was all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And I saw myself I saw her as some old woman standing
Yeah.
in my way initially. And then another person in the branch who was also a bit older, but also a very seasoned and very good loan officer, like knew everything. Like she
Yeah.
was like, come in to me. What you trying to prove? And I was like, Mom. I mean, I just trying to do my thing. Why are you trying so hard to disprove what you know is the truth? I was like, but if all y'all saying the same thing, and all these were women who I like respected and revered
Absolutely.
and would take anything, I would do anything for them.
Yeah.
Even though 2 of them were strangers to me in the sense that they were my
Right.
family.
Right.
And when she had this thing where her hair was very long, and she would always lean in, and she would flash a half smile to let you know that, listen to me, I'm correcting you, but I love you so much,
Yes.
which is why I'm correcting you.
Yes.
And she said, Ahmad, slow down.
Yeah.
You're going too fast and
Yeah.
you're going to miss this process. And that to me was the defining moment in what I did professionally thereafter.
Yeah.
Go through the process, experience the thing.
Yes.
Because you can get to
Yes.
this point and not be ready for it and still lose.
I am telling you, that was powerful.
You know, and I feel like there was a part of me when I was much younger that felt like because I knew I could, I should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I knew I could, why not give me the opportunity?
Yeah.
Because you aren't ready yet.
You don't know what you don't know until you actually need
And
it.
then you realize, well, blow me down. I ain't even
Yeah.
remotely ready for
Yeah.
this thing.
Many a days, I've sat in senior roles and I would hear about this situation and the next situation happening with the team. And my spidey sense would say that's not right.
Wow.
Something is missing there. Tell me a little bit more. Go a little bit deeper.
Yes.
You know why? Because I've been there.
Yes.
And if 1 and 1 equals 2, then that's what it should be.
Yes.
But something is off,
Something
right?
is
1
off
and 1
here.
is equaling 3,
Yeah.
or mine is 1. So, and you don't know everything, but
you know something isn't right.
right.
That's
Through
that
those
discernment you talked about.
experiences. Exactly.
Right?
But through the experiences as well, because you've been there, you've understood, you've sat in the seat,
Yes,
and
yes.
you may not know absolutely the whole situation, but you know enough
Something isn't right.
instinctively to say something isn't right, and that's
Yeah.
what experience brings. Many, many times I've sat down and I've actually been able to pull into my experiences and say, let's come and have a conversation about this a little bit more.
Yes.
Right? Without that, you don't have the substance. You don't have the foundation that you need
Wow.
to actually keep you. You could get there,
Yes.
but it's about staying
It's the
there.
keeping, the staying
The
power.
keeping there, right?
Wow.
When I understand what it took to be a successful sales professional, then I could actually coach somebody to be a
Yes.
successful sales professional, or I could feel their pain
Yes.
on that journey.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? So we do want things sometimes a little bit faster, and we get it. But when you step back and you look, you realize that all of that was just preparation.
Definitely.
Preparation for the greater things.
So, Lasonya, you have had a very colorful, progressive,
Yeah.
rewarding career, I imagine,
Yes.
based on our conversation so far. What would you say, one, is next for Lasonya?
Yeah.
And then two, what do you want your legacy to be, your leadership legacy to be?
I'll probably say what my husband wants me to say is next, which is a grandbaby.
Okay, okay.
But what I want in terms of what's next for me, I just want to continue to grow into what I'm doing now. Like, I'm enjoying it. I'm actually finding myself just growing and expanding in terms of my thinking, and actually turning into a person where I can just be that advisor. Everybody has a
Wow.
transition, right?
Yes.
To be that advisor, to watch others come up and come along. And to help to pull them along. I feel like I've gotten more than I ever expected to get
Wow.
or achieve, right?
Wow.
And so for me, every new experience is just a new journey. You almost feel like, I'm going along now for a really great ride.
Yes,
And I
yes.
want to continue to do well in that, but
Wow.
it's a blessing to be where I am. So I'm in a very good space in
Nice.
that
Very
respect. My legacy at the end of the day, I would say, Ahmad, it's twofold. One, I want my legacy to be that I poured something into people. Absolutely. When they call my name, I want them to say, you know what? I got something from her, and I'm where I am as a result of learning with her. She was one of the people that did that. The other thing is I live for my children. And I want, at the end of the day, when I'm long gone, people say to my son, who was your mother? Right? And he says, Lasonya. He said, wow, she was a good lady.
Yes.
I knew your mom. Come, let
Yes.
me help you.
Yes.
Because of that. Right?
Yes.
If I can have those two things,
Wow.
that would be all I need.
Wow.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping that you are getting as you watch these episodes and you dive deeper into this leadership journey is that each of the people I get the opportunity, the privilege to engage, has said they want to be able to pass something on to somebody else. There's a level of humanity that shines through in these conversations. You cannot be a leader if you're not prepared to give of yourself in a way that is going to leave you selfless. It's not going to give you anything but the fact that, wow, I was able to help somebody else.
Absolutely.
I have a responsibility, she said, to succeed. I cannot fail because that means somebody else might. If I succeed, somebody else could. That is mind-blowing to me, Lasonya. There's so many people who would have been at your level of leadership and figure it's all about them. It's the next notch on the belt. It's the next thing on the resume. It's the next letter behind their name versus what could I do? How could I use this opportunity to create another one for somebody else?
Absolutely.
That is phenomenal. I'm praying that as you, like I said, go deeper into these conversations, you see that what these individuals have in common is that they are leaders with humanity. They are leading from a place of purpose, from a place of caring, and from a place of creating a legacy for somebody else. Lasonya, thank you. Any final words for our audience before we leave? Any final words you want to share?
No, I just want to say continue to do what you're doing, Ahmad. I think it's so powerful.
Thank you so much.
Really to create this forum where young people can understand that they can accomplish a lot of these things that they see us doing every day.
Yes.
Sometimes we feel far out of reach because of the worlds that we're living in now, but understand that It was just like you.
Yes.
You know, we started
Yes.
off doing the same things you're doing
the
through
exact
now.
same thing.
It's just like you. So please
Jeez.
continue to stay encouraged. I'm so happy that you invited me.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
Be here.
It is
it's
an honor.
as well.
It is an
to
honor.
be here and continue to just continue to be great. I encourage you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do want to say, I feel like when there are people in your life who inspire you, tell them.
Yeah.
Tell them that they inspire you, because sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what the extent of their action or inaction or thought or whatever has been for you. One thing about telling somebody that they've inspired you is that it inspires them to inspire others.
Yes.
Right? And Lasonya, you have certainly been an inspiration to me. And I think people all over the world, there are people who are living in those 10 countries that you now have direct oversight of that will say, wait a minute, this woman look and sound like me.
Yes.
Because historically, these roles were not filled by people that look like you, Lasonya.
No,
Come
they
on now,
weren't.
let's be honest about
They
that.
weren't.
And not
They
even
weren't.
historically, today. There are persons in roles like yours, and they're looking at you like, who you think? Well, darling, I can tell you that this is not something that that happened overnight.
No.
When I joined the bank, I saw and first of all heard of this young lady, and to see her now at the level of, it's incredible, Lasonya. You are an inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being a part of this experience, for helping our audience and prayerful find themselves in you.
Yes.
See that leadership is possible once you are intentional,
Yeah.
strategic. She did not wake up every day and figure out what she's going to do. She had a plan that she stuck to, I'm sure, adjusted every now and again, reevaluated, but saw her way through it. And the last thing was, I want to be successful so somebody else can. What are you doing for somebody else around you? What is your legacy going to be? What is your leadership footprint? Don't worry about the shoes you think you have to fill. Walk in the shoes God gave you to fill. I'm so grateful, Lasonya, for your expertise today, for your insight, for your heart. Today, God bless you. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been tuned into the iLEAD podcast, the place where you've come to learn, empower, adapt, and disrupt. Do not stop now. This is your clarion call to keep pushing, to keep going, and to build the legacy you deserve to have. Thank you so much. God bless you.